Hello everyone. So here we are. Happy Gemini. Happy birthday to all the Gemini, Sun, Moon, and Rising signs. This episode is going to be discussing Gemini 1, the first decan of Gemini, which begins May 20th or 21st and ends May 30th, 31st. Whenever a new decan, especially when we're in the first decan, take a look at your calendar, because every other year or so the dates fluctuate. So it could be either May 20th or the 21st, and we count 10 days forward, because the three decans that provide direction with the minor arcana for each astrological sign runs for 30 days. So we have 0 to 10 degrees, which is the first 10 days, and then from 10 to 20, which is more or less the second decan, which is, I feel, really influences and plays a role of how Gemini works and how they do actions for that second decan. And then we wind it down with 20 to 30 degrees, which takes us towards the end of Gemini. And I will walk through those different decans for the month of Gemini. So for this year, we are going to be moving into the sign of Gemini today, and that will be May 21st to the 31st. So we have this hashtag that I am guessing is going to be about a year old. If we go through all the decans for those who are taking part in this, it's hashtag Decan Walk or Decan Walk 2023. So I want to jump into it. You can look back at some of my videos that I have in my playlist where I discuss about different influences of the decans, and I do readings based on what's going on during that decan week. But here I want to just give a brief overview and discussion about the first decan and the minor arcana, major arcana cards that are influenced at this time. Now, Gemini, as we know, I'm going to show you here. Okay, Gemini is ruled by Mercury. Okay, so Gemini is an air sign. It's mercurial. If you hear that term, boy, you're very mercurial in your ways. It's the way that Gemini communicates. They are very expressive with words. Communication is very important to them. That's how they connect to people. It goes in with interacting with people at a family level, business level, and also relationship level. Geminis are looking for that connection with people, and they do that through voice. They do that by speaking. They also do it by reaching out to people by writing. Authors, songwriters, script writers, that's how they express themselves. So with Gemini, there is also the quizzical part of the sign. They like to ask questions, and they tend to be more studious that way. I'm not saying that Geminis are the smartest intellectual sign out of all the other signs. Maybe some of you are thinking, oh, maybe that's me. If I'm a Gemini, I must be smart. But they have a way of connecting with people through words. And so they come across in a way that they may seem to know everything. Gemini is also, the symbol that associates Gemini is the twins. Okay, so some of the things that come with Gemini is that they're very multitask people. They can think and do things at the same time, and that's what keeps Gemini going. And so by asking questions, by communicating with people, and trying to get to the roots an understanding of how people are, you will find Geminis to be one of the more fascinating people out there, because they show that curiosity. They want to learn, they want to understand people. Geminis would also make very good interviewers, because that's how they connect with people. They want to understand. Now, everything here of Gemini is coming from the mind. So when questions are being asked or there is communication, it tends to be more direct. It doesn't tend to be emotionally driven, because Gemini is motivated by the response that they get from people, by hearing answers and asking more questions until they feel like they got the right connection, that they got the information that they need. Now, with this decan here, it is ruled by the Eight of Swords. So this first decan of Gemini, the planetary placement is with Jupiter, and that's why I have this card here. Okay, Jupiter is a fire planet. I don't want to go too heavy about discussing the planetary influences, because I do want to focus more on the energy of Gemini and how these cards interact with each other. Now, Jupiter is fire, and one of the signs that is ruled by Jupiter and is the polar sign to Gemini, polar being the opposite sign of Gemini, is Sagittarius. So Sagittarius is a fire sign. Fire and air work together. And so with Jupiter, what do we know about Jupiter? It is abundance, it is growth, it is expansive energy. Gemini, you will see, are very, as they speak, their body movements go with them. They're very animated. Gemini also rules the shoulders, the arms, and the hands. So Geminis, you may see them being more expressive with their gestures, with their arms and their hands. Now, the reason why I'm saying that in relation to Jupiter is when you're talking, right, you're moving your hands around. You need the space. So you please make sure any Geminis who are tarot readers and they have candles or anything like that, please clear space, because if you're going to be talking with your hands, there's a good chance something may knock over, and we don't want that. And so Jupiter with this first decan of Gemini, and in relation to the Eight of Swords, this is from the Ashira Tarot, and also Gemini is ruled by the major arcana of the Magician, which is Mercury ruled. We're seeing a creative use of the mind. Okay, I have one other card here, and this is from the Unified Esoteric Tarot, and I won't discuss too much about the differences with this. This deck in particular uses all 10 of the planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. So when Attila created this deck, the planets had to be rearranged because he was introducing these 3 additional planets into this deck. So what we would normally see through the Golden Dawn tradition as Jupiter being ruled for this first decan, it is actually Mercury in Gemini. And I will have him as a guest again on my channel, and we'll talk about that. We'll talk about why some of the planets that the 3 additional planets that were placed in his deck, how he came to shift these planets around. Okay, it makes sense here for Mercury and Gemini, because Mercury is the planet associated with Gemini. So for him, he started out with that planetary association for this first decan. But here we have Jupiter. So again, we have air and fire signs that both complement each other. Gemini, because of the way that they speak, they find themselves in an environment where they work good in large groups. Okay. One-on-one is good, but for the most part, I find Geminis are really comfortable, and I almost feel like they have a sense of taking command when they're in a large room of people. It allows Gemini to kind of navigate through the crowds, through the groups of people, and just communicate and see what connects with them. And from there, that's how Gemini learns. Gemini grows in that way, by connection, networking, keywords that we have here. And then from there, they gain this different perspective, and they can apply it to so many different avenues for themselves and also in other situations. Okay, so here, let's go right to our Eight of Swords. So with the Eight of Swords, with the Eight of Swords here, we have the Jupiter and Gemini placement here. So when we've normally seen the Eight of Swords in the tarot, we usually see someone who's surrounded by 8 swords. There's like maybe 4 in the back, 2 in the front, or 2 on either side, and then maybe I think 2 additional ones in front. They're placed differently in some cards, but here we have the soul, the entity, the individual, completely surrounded by this. And here we have the twins. Okay, and so we can see this as our external self and our internal self, but having conflict. Okay, Jupiter does not work good in the sense of Gemini when it comes to moving forward. It can actually weaken this sign, okay, because of the expansiveness of Jupiter, which can work very strongly for Gemini, but it can also go against them because it's all this energy that's coming around. It's fiery energy. It's a lot of movement. And a lot of this movement, if there's a lot of space for Gemini, it's not going to give them a direction. Okay? Jupiter is a planet that does not place well with air signs, because air signs need to have a set direction. Okay? And Gemini is also mutable. So there's flexibility. They can work in different situations, which is good, but we have to know how to manage that energy. We have to know how to work with all the information that we're taking. How are we putting it to use? It has to be in a direct manner. So with this Eight of Swords here, we're seeing too much. We're seeing an overwhelming. Okay, we need to take a moment to actually carefully think, what are we doing with all of this that's coming to us, whether it's negative energy, negative thoughts, or things that are allowing us to move forward. How are we going to contain it in such a way that this energy can move more in a flowing manner? Okay, and this is where the Magician comes in. Okay, Magician is Mercury. We have the symbol right here. Okay, so when we see and think about the Magician, okay, the Magician is known as the master, the communicator of all the elements, fire, earth, air, water. And when I say communicator and master, it's an individual who knows and understands the workings and the powers of those elements and how to use them in a very mindful manner. Sometimes the magician, the magus, is known as the trickster. Sometimes there's a sleight of hand because, as I mentioned, Gemini knows the way to talk. Sometimes they can use their talk in a way to take advantage of a situation, either for the betterment or maybe for the opposite of the effect of what they're trying to do. They may try to do harm. I'm not saying Geminis are deceitful. All signs have negative and positive influences. It's a matter of how they use that energy. Okay, so with the Eight of Swords here, for this first decan here, as we go into Gemini, this is a card that shows conflict and struggle, but this is something we need to learn from. Okay, people don't like seeing the swords because the swords have been depicted in quite a few decks in a conflicting, challenging way, and we don't like to see that. But what we got to do is we need to change that way of thinking and understanding. This is something that we can learn from. Okay, this is something where we can grow. Okay, this is where the Jupiter influence can come in. You know, it's what can we learn from our situation when we've been challenged. Okay, how does Gemini handle a challenge? This first decan, how would Gemini work with the Eight of Swords to remedy a situation? Okay, they're not going to go by the heart. They're going to start thinking. They're going to start processing, problem solving, how to take care of a situation. Okay, so they think before taking action, and that's what's very important. And the way to take care of that is to understand a situation is, again, you need to break it down, analyze it, look at it from different perspectives, and see what is the best direction to take. Okay, and also I feel air signs are not afraid of taking risks. Okay, because there is not that emotional attachment with the air signs. I'm not saying that all the air signs are cold, but they don't have that heavy, they don't have that water influence, because we have the fire influence of Jupiter for this first decan, but also primarily Mercury. Okay, everything is of communication, and that's where the problem solving comes in. They're good delegators and diplomats, because they want to understand and see the best way to take care of challenges so that they can learn from them. And sometimes, you know, they may make a choice that may not work in their favor, but Gemini learns from it. All of the signs, we learn from our mistakes, but we also have to learn we need to move on. Okay, we need to keep growing forward. Okay, and so there is a lot to learn with the energy of the magician. We have all the archetypes in the tarot in us, and that's where the journey of the Fool, ourselves, our inner selves, comes into play. What's the first card that we see after the Fool? This is our first teacher. And then what's the second card after the Magus? We see the High Priestess. We see energy that's been moving, that we're learning from the outside, the external self. And then when we meet the High Priestess, we start learning and exploring that inner self. Okay, so with the Eight of Swords here, for this first decan of Gemini, during this week, from the 21st to the 31st, What are some of these challenges that we may have posed upon ourselves, or that we've may interlocked with someone else or a group of people? What is the best way that we can remedy this? Okay, so we're looking at, let's start using our thoughts. Let's start using our intellect. I think the best way for me to describe this is, let's be more mindful of how we approach different situations. Ask questions. Don't assume. Okay? That's what Gemini's all about. Gemini will ask questions until they feel that they're understanding what's going on, either with their partner or with work or anything of that nature. You need to communicate. I think there's a saying that goes, the question that is not asked is probably not the smartest question, the one that is never asked, because you will never know, you'll never get that answer. And in doing so, by not asking that question, you will more than likely remain in this. Okay? But another way of seeing this Jupiter influence is by understanding the situation, facing your challenges. These thoughts, these swords, will start removing themselves. Okay? You won't feel chambered in. So once things start coming to light, these swords start being removed. And guess what? You start having the space to move forward, and understanding and remembering what was the experience you had from this challenge. Okay? So those are my thoughts about this first decan in Gemini, with that primary planetary ruler of Mercury, but also Jupiter, how Jupiter can actually work with Gemini because of the expanding nature, the spaciousness that air needs when it's working with fire. Because when you extinguish fire, there's the air is removed, and therefore there's no movement. So we need to know how to work within a space of abundance in different situations. We need to be direct. Okay? And that's where this Eight of Swords comes into play. It forces us to really hone in on the crux of the situation. Alrighty, so this is our first decan of Gemini, Gemini 1. Planetary ruler of Gemini is Mercury. This first decan is Jupiter in Gemini, or with Attila's deck, the Unified Esoteric Tarot, Mercury and Gemini. So you can still use the influence of this planet, natural planet ruler for Gemini, for this first decan, but also keep in mind, again, the fiery property of Jupiter. Okay? Too much movement, but we need to put Jupiter influence into a context of where it becomes more of a focused, disciplined thought between you, yourself, or any other outside influence that may be coming in, and it's making it difficult to move forward. Alrighty, so let me know how your journey is going with this decan walk. It's I'm really enjoying this. I'm keeping it very simple because I know there's a few people on YouTube that are exploring this in different ways. Some are doing it creatively, some are doing it more as a personal journey. Me, I'm giving it more of an astrological twist to the readings in relation to the minor arcana and the major arcana influences that come in. So yeah, let me know how the journey's going. What have you learned so far since starting with Aries and completing that Decan month, and then of course Taurus, which we're just wrapping up, and now we're going to Gemini. We're heading towards the end of our spring season with Gemini, which will take us, I believe it's going to be, I think it's June 20th or June 19th that it ends, and then we go into the sign of Cancer. Alrighty, so thank you for listening. Any questions, please ask. I love the decans, and I love bringing the astrology aspect into it. Not too heavy, because I still want to have people understanding the tarot aspect of the decans. But yes, any questions you have, feel free to ask. I am happy to help. And feel free to like, subscribe, let people know about this channel. I have a playlist of some of the Decan influences that I've done. It's in the archives in the playlist, but some of it's about 2 years old already, but feel free to take a look at that. All right, happy birthday again, everyone, for Gemini, Sun, Moon, and Rising. And I will see you all again very, very soon. Thank you for the support.